All right, Genesis 25, let's call this one space. Why? Because space is exactly what was necessary to help create a semblance of peace between two brothers who are described as being at odds from the womb. And that is, in this chapter, Jacob and Esau. But they're not alone, because just backing up a generation, we see something similar between Isaac and Ishmael when space was what was in a lot of ways needed to help create peace in that situation. And they aren't unlike, backing up a little further, Abraham and Lot, for whom space created the opportunity to create peace, at least between their herdsmen, as we've described before, who had first world problems when they had so much stuff that they needed more land to create room for each of them to operate. And these, in a lot of ways, are bright side stories, because if we back up even further, we see that the absence of space gave Cain the opportunity to kill Abel when their relationship went south. And so space is not always a bad thing. It can actually create the opportunity to generate peace in situations that are growing unnecessarily tense. But there are a couple of things that we can also observe about the space and the way it was used in these situations. First of all, Abram and Lot, it doesn't have to be a great deal of space. Why? Because in their relationship, they still stayed close enough that when Lot got in trouble, Abraham was close enough to be able to swoop in and help him out of his dilemma. Moving forward, though, there are some times when the nature of the dispute requires more space to create peace, and that's what we see in Isaac and Ishmael. And so likewise, when we're in chapter 25 with Jacob and Esau, Jacob takes both the blessing and the birthright from Esau, which makes Esau mad enough to kill Jacob, or to want to kill Jacob. And so they end up sending Jacob away far enough for Esau to cool down. And in later chapters, we're going to see them be able to come back together, make the peace, even though it's not a fairy tale ending, because you'll see later chapters and later books of the Bible, their descendants end up having conflict. But the other thing we can notice is, at least with regard to Abraham, early on, we've mentioned the way that he did not step in to help create peace between Sarah and Hagar, and that spilled over into the conflict that eventually ended up in Hagar being sent away from the home. He seems to have learned that, because in this chapter, Sarah has already passed on. He's taken on a new wife, and he early on realizes that the fact that he's going to bless Isaac more, in many ways consistent with the promise that he got from God, is going to require him to create some distance between Keturah's descendants and Isaac. And we don't seem to see the same level of friction between Isaac and Keturah's descendants as we see between Isaac and Ishmael's descendants. And anyone who wants to look that up can help me out, because I don't know the relationships between the two tribes, meaning the descendants of Keturah and the descendants of Ishmael, as much. But I do know that much of the conflict that we see to this day in the Middle East stems from the friction between the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael, whereas the only biblical conflict that we see coming out of Keturah's descendants with the descendants of Isaac comes out of the Midianites. But beyond that, I don't know. So anyway, anybody who has more information on that can write in and help correct it. But it looks like, just from what we have written biblically, Abraham learning to intervene early and rationally creating a healthy distance helps create a better platform for peace between Isaac's descendants and those of Keturah than he was able to realize in later generations between Isaac's descendants and Ishmael's descendants. So early intervention seems to have helped in this circumstance. What else did we learn? We learned that this is not the only situation where distance helps create peace, because moving forward to the New Testament, we see Paul and Barnabas, after having a successful first missionary journey together, have a sharp dispute over a gentleman by the name of John Mark, and they part ways to the point where they don't work together in the second missionary journey. And that ends up working well, because Paul is able to still have enough space to have a successful second missionary journey. And more importantly, in his later writings, he's able to speak well of John Mark, even though John Mark was the source of the dispute that caused Paul and Barnabas to split in the first place. And so again, we're seeing an example where space used proactively can help create healing. And you might have seen something similar in your own relationships, where the distance between you and a friend does not compromise the affection. Sometimes it's simply because life circumstances takes good friends in different directions, but it doesn't compromise the ability to say, look, if you need me, all you gotta do is call. However, in these situations, we're seeing instances in which distance is used to help restore that level of affection in a friendship. And so my encouragement for all of us is this: allow God to help us see situations in which distance can help restore the level of affection that says, look, if you need me, just call.